Okay, so what we're going to be talking about today is a short story written by George R. R. Martin called Unsound Variations, released in 1982, but reprinted in Volume 2 of Dream Songs. Now this is going to be a spoiler-full discussion. We're going to dive into it. We're going to talk about everything, and we're going to assume that you've listened to it, so that we're not going to really do too much of a general plot review. We're just going to jump into it. So if you haven't read Unsound Variations, I think the guys will agree with me. We highly recommend that you go and read it first and then come listen to this podcast. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, the spoilers are really spoiling
Yeah.
things. The twist
Yeah.
is worth it. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically now you've gone and you've read or reread it and you've come back. And what we're going to do is we're going to start off just with our lemon cake rating, and then we're going to jump into just what we thought of the story, like different parts, basically just analyze the heck out of it. But I will give this story, honestly, I'm going to give it 5 out of 5 lemon cakes. It's one of my favorite George R. R. Martin short stories. I mean, he is a master short story writer. That's where he started from. But I found it's one, like the characters in a short story, especially, you don't have a lot of time to establish stuff, but he establishes the characters very well. The story's pretty good, and the way I read it, like up till the very end, or maybe even at the very end, you're never quite sure if like this. Now that we're talking about spoilers, we're never quite sure if time travel is happening or other things are happening. There could be alternate explanations there, but it's just set up in such an interesting way that you make your own judgment at the end. So yeah, I'm giving it 5 out of 5 lemon cakes. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I have a hard time disagreeing with that. Yeah, I mean, you basically said everything there was to say almost. He's a fantastic short story writer. I really like short stories. This was a great short story. I think 5 out of 5.
Yeah. So you need to flash back and then say what I said before I say it.
Yeah, and that way it'll leave you completely tongue tied.
Yeah, this book is, I mean, Dream Songs is just filled with like wonderful stories, and this definitely stands out all, among all of them. I definitely will give it 5 out of 5, even among Dream Songs stories.
Now, do you guys know about the genesis of the story? Because I'd heard there was some sort of contest or something where George, or some sort of deal where he's supposed to write about chess and time travel in a single story. Have you heard?
Oh, I hadn't heard that. No.
Yeah. I think he had
No,
made a deal with somebody, right?
oh, I kind of thought he is. I mean, he's always been into chess, right? Even at he's kind of like the main character in this book, right? He's Peter.
Well, that's a question I would ask him actually if we ever had him on the podcast, and I would like to ask him Song of Ice and Fire questions, and then have like a round where it's like your other works, and I'd ask him
Oh
which
yeah,
character
absolutely.
do you identify as closer to you? Is it Peter or these other characters? Is it a mix?
I mean, it's so uncanny, right? I mean, George was. I mean, he was a journalist for a brief time. I think he wrote sports columns or something, right, for some small newspaper, and then of course a writer now. And Peter is also exactly the same. He was a novelist, and then he became a journalist. So it's like.
Yeah, and I mean George talks about in like the little whatever the little introductions to each section of Dream Songs or whatever.
Yeah.
He talks about how like if anything had gone a little bit different, he would have wound up a journalist instead of an author or something like that.
Hmm. Okay. Well, why don't we jump into it, and as we talk about stuff, like things will come out. I mean, like
Yeah.
at the start of the story, Peter is going with his wife to this meeting of basically like they had a chess club. I think was it 10 years ago? Like about 10 years ago when they were at
Yeah.
university, they had a chess club, and now they haven't really seen each other for 10 years, and they're having a reunion at one of the guys' like mansion who's like struck it rich now. And on the way there, like even just in the drive there, it's like it's setting the characters there. You can see the tension between them and the bitterness in a marriage that's basically being failed and throughout the story and we're talking about like George drawing upon his own life and so that's why I wanted to look up and see like when was it that George himself had been divorced, and it seemed he was divorced only recently, a couple of years before the story.
He was divorced, most like a couple of years probably before he wrote it. So
and a lot of his stories he basically like draws from his own experiences to give them more life. Like I think even like have either of you read what is it called, the one with like the mummy? No, not mummy. It's coming out. Like Meat Man. Have either read Meat Man?
I actually haven't read Meat
Oh
Man.
yeah, Meat House Man, right?
Yeah. Like I think in that one
Yeah, I
again, he
read
also
that.
drew upon like personal experience, not like real personal experiences like going to zombie place, but but it's just like relationships, failed relationships, and I feel like that at least had to be in his mind to make it realistic to draw upon personal experiences and Barb's in the description of a failed marriage.
Yeah.
Like he's willing to do that for the quality of his writing to up it. So
Yeah, I've never been into much of romantic stuff, it's always been cheesy and stuff like that, like, like Twilight and stuff like that. But when Martin writes romance, it feels very real. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he does do a good job of that. Just, I mean, all the shit he takes for his sex scenes, but when he's actually writing relationship stuff, I think he actually does fairly well.
cool. So yeah, keep going. If you guys have like anything going on from there, if you will.
Okay, yeah, I mean, it was interesting. Katie and Peter's dynamic, I mean, Katie was just being hurtful just for the sake of being hurtful. And yeah, it was interesting right off the bat. And you kind of feel for Peter immediately. You kind of put yourself in his shoes right away. I don't know why. I just felt very connected to him, even though our experiences are completely different.
Yeah, I was kind of not quite confused or baffled or anything quite that severe, but at the beginning, I was sitting there going like, why in the hell did she come on this trip? Like I was just trying to like think like what was she thinking when she got in the car to come to leave or whatever. It was just like it's obviously just like fucking pissed as hell and doesn't want to go, but I don't know.
Well, even underneath the barbs and the stuff, they still have like feelings for each
Yeah,
other. Kind of
exactly.
like,
So I mean, and that comes out at the end, right? That there is, it's still a deeper thing that's still alive or whatever. But
Yeah.
so on the way there, they kind of describe like what happened. One of you guys want to tell me like what happened the last time they had a big tournament in college?
yeah. So basically, oh shit, I can't remember any of the
Yeah.
characters' names. What's the name of the main guy?
So it's the Northwestern chess tournament, and
Yeah.
and okay, so he was the organizer for the event and also the captain of the B team, and they fielded like 6 teams in the tournament. And who did they go against? University of Chicago, right?
I think
That's
so.
Yeah, that
the
was who
Yeah.
the B team was playing at the last round.
Yeah, and they were going to be University of Chicago was already set to win. If they beat their team, they would be the champions. And the match was kind of going okay. Peter himself had a draw. EC lost. Steve won. He won against a master. It seems, or a grandmaster, no, expert or something.
I think
And
it was a
there was
master.
Bruce. Bruce was competing with somebody called Vassals. Sorry, Vesselari,
Yeah.
the fat guy, the fat guy.
There's lots of fat guys in the
And
story actually. George always puts fat guys in there.
and this guy's supposed to be really good. He's supposed to be a master or something. And Bruce is a designated Class A player. So it was a very uneven match. But Bruce was supposed to be have a photographic memory or something, and he was giving the guy the run for his money. And there was this. They call this a critical point, and it's a point in the match. And one mistake here and there could take the match in one direction or the other.
Hmm.
And the story is basically that critical point. It's all about that.
And actually, just add to the more like George drew upon his life. Like apparently he actually went to Northwestern himself. I'm looking at here. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, George went to Northwestern and he also ran chess tournaments,
Yeah.
like the guy did. So, like, not just played, but was like a tournament organizer. or
you
whatever.
can tell just because from the way he writes, right? He's drawing upon like this
Yeah, absolutely.
knowledge
Yeah.
of that. And he makes it interesting. I mean, the overall story, you think like chess could be boring, but the way he writes it, it makes it interesting. Like,
Yeah, he does a good job. Like, I don't really, I mean, like, I know how to play, I know what direction the pieces move or whatever,
Yeah.
but other than that, I know basically nothing about chess. But he
Yeah,
kept,
same thing. Yeah.
but I thought he did a good job keeping, like, there's one point where Bruce plays, the first guy, whose name I can't remember. Sorry.
I think he played Steve first. Yeah.
Yeah, he plays Steve
Hal
first,
or
right?
somebody.
And that game goes into like a fair amount of detail about the moves or whatever, and I thought he did a good job of keeping that interesting, even for someone who didn't really know the game particularly well.
Oh yeah, that's a very good point. Same thing. I only know the basics of chess. Like a pawn can be moved in L direction, a
Sure,
knight
yeah.
can be moved diagonally, a queen can only take one step. So I know the basics. But
I'm pretty
nothing
sure.
much.
I'm pretty sure everything you just said was wrong.
Oh what? No.
Shocking lack of chess knowledge.
You guys know I'm just kidding, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking, I was hoping that was what just happened.
Okay.
Yeah, an elephant can move diagonally. Yeah. It's all
Yeah.
up to date current rules. Yeah, go read your rules, guys. So, anyways, yeah. So I don't know much about chess. Nothing. I don't know what a
Yeah.
Sicilian is. I don't know what
No,
is,
yeah.
But you kind of get a sense. Hey, when he's talking about a Sicilian, this is a very powerful move, and there are very few things that can turn us away. So you kind of get the context of things, and Martin's really good about that.
So when
Yeah.
they get there and they find out that Brucey as they call him, like is really rich now, and he comes out and like this is like phase one of the story, which just seems like a normal story. And he's done this
Yeah.
with a couple stories. Like I'm not gonna name the names, but there's a couple of these stories where it's like it starts like a normal story, you think it's normal, and then suddenly like some sort of fantasy or sci-fi element jumps into it. But
Yeah.
this just seems like it's just one guy showing off his fame and getting revenge. And I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I think it's definitely a gray story in the sense that like Peter and these guys aren't necessarily the good guys because they definitely did a lot of bad things to Bruce. You kind of feel sorry for him when he
Yeah.
some of the things that happen, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. I'm certainly not saying that they're good guys. I mean, they're not heroes, really. I don't think in any sense. But at the same time, I don't know. It's hard to know when you're like when everybody's playing. I mean, because it did feel like EC played pranks on everyone, and like a lot of people. Steve got tagged with like a nickname that he didn't like either, and all sorts of things like that happened. And it seems like some people sort of took them in a lighthearted spirit, and some people didn't.
But some bullying is not equal to
Yeah,
others, right? Like, so he got
Yeah,
the brunt of it.
the
I mean,
other thing is
that's what I'm.
probably. I'm sorry. I was going to say the other thing is probably just Bruce is not an ordinary guy himself. He's not like a likable guy. He's kind of arrogant. He's kind of boastful, and so I think so when he makes a mistake, I think people are just kind of overdo it. I think so if Steve lost, EC wouldn't have been so hard on him, and Steve likewise. I think, but since it was Bruce who's kind of always bragging and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that that's part of it. I mean, Bruce was an unpleasant person even then, and so people were sort of unpleasant back to him. But yeah, I mean, certainly I don't think that the other three guys are the good guys. I just I don't know that they're necessarily the bad guys either.
Yeah, I think it's definitely gray, and I mean, like, part of it is his memory doesn't let him forget things. Like, it makes it worse for
Yeah,
him, right? Like, he just can't even
right.
control it. And second, like, I mean, the fact that he's arrogant and stuff, again, like, it can depend on, like, well, if he was treated badly earlier, that could be, like, his mechanism
Sure. Yeah,
and
yeah,
stuff. So it's definitely gray. Like, it's kind of, it's not black and white one way or the other. It's not chess piece black and white. It's,
yeah.
Yeah.
it's gray.
And the guy can hold his grudges, right? I mean,
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
he-
go ahead.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Uh,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Michael.
okay. I was just gonna say one more thing about like sort of the
Sure.
beginning thing is that the air of like of menace it to Brucey came through I thought really well in the early
Mm.
stuff, just like the things with the even little things like the garage door automatically closing and the greetings appearing on like a computer screen or whatever. uh all that stuff like right away you sort of had like I felt like it was George's sort of horror expertise coming through there. Like right away you were like something's not right,
Mm.
you know?
Yeah, because
Oh,
that's the thing.
wow.
He's a master of all genres, right? He's able to draw
Yeah.
upon one while doing another. And just
Yeah.
some of his terminology, like because Bruce hides. He's like he hides. He has smiling, but behind it was pure iced venom.
Right.
That's maybe nice. Nice to order that pure iced venom. That'd probably be useful.
I think that's so spot on because I was reading it in
Yeah.
Dream Songs, and Dream Songs has all sorts of stories in it, right? It's not just sci-fi. I didn't know what to expect, and half the time I was expecting some kind of a slasher thing. This Bruce guy was going to like turn off the lights and then going to stab everybody to
Somebody's
death
dead.
or something.
Yeah.
The time travel thing I completely took me off. Wait, what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's hints of what's coming later because you see like when he's like looking at them and he's angry, but there's like this ageless anger or something in his eyes. It's
Right.
like
Yeah. I
like
noticed that my second read.
what's
Yeah.
going on here? And so on the front, on the first glance, it seems like it's just a guy who's got rich and he's getting revenge for being like what happened back
Yeah.
before. But then, um, well, one like you see how the character like everyone's gone how they've done afterwards poorly, and on the way there, I think even on the way there, that Peter's like, life seems to have gone bad since that event. It all went bad since that event. And you're thinking,
Yeah.
well,
I
you're just
think
focusing on an event too much. We all say like, oh, if only I had done this sort of
sure.
thing. But it turns out that was actually a very pivotal
Yeah.
event in all their
Exactly.
life. Um, so there's that. But again, another thing I wanted to mention in terms of like the Bruce thing is like, and Bruce himself mentions it, is he's like, hey, why did you put me there first? He was basically thrown under the bus and expected to lose.
Yeah, I mean,
Right?
he absolutely was. But I mean, I've got to think that that's like, I mean, obviously, I don't know anything about chess tournaments or whatever, but I mean, I have to think that that must be fairly standard sort of strategy.
Strategy sort of thing, yeah.
If you're playing like a much stronger team, then surely you want to get your best person against their worst person to have any chance of balancing it out. I don't know, but
Yeah.
Yeah, the closest thing I've experienced with something like this is basically StarCraft 2 team matches, and they kind of go through the same strategy. Do you want to put your strongest player first and have him, the entire team, kill it, or do you want to hold him up and go against player that he's better equipped to handle or something? So
yeah,
yeah.
Okay, so and I mean they've all had like, I mean Peter has been messed up in his career. EC's
yeah,
kind of had like a middling career, and then Del
yeah,
Mario's just gone to shit. Like he's like
yeah,
lost his family and he's a drunkard now.
right,
So he's rubbing it in and like, you know, really like he's like, oh, I'm a master chess. Like Del Mario's like, I can't play chess anymore. He's like, I'm a master, and it just seems like
yeah,
okay, this is the first level. But then we start to find out that apparently this guy's like, oh, I've been time traveling.
yeah.
So what did you think when that happened? Like when you first said it, you're like, what?
You know, it's funny actually. I didn't read this the story for the first time that long ago.
Hmm.
I don't have a particularly clear memory of being surprised by the time travel thing. I think I was just so waiting for like the other shoe to drop and
Hmm.
to see like what Bruce's game was, that when it popped out that it was time travel, I almost was like more relieved to know what was going on than I was surprised that it was time travel.
Yeah, and Martin does a good job, right? He kind of shows us all the three reactions of EC not believing it, saying that it's just a scam. Then there's Steve, who completely immediately buys it, and then Peter, who was skeptical at first, but he eventually is convinced that what is this guy saying is true. So
Yeah.
Because all the things that he say, like, there's a possibility he could have found another way. Like, he could have just like used money to screw them over. Like, he became rich in a few years.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, and even like the story that he finds out about, well, the agent had known, so technically he could have found.
Yeah, I guess I think I mean I believed him right away because you know what
Yeah.
the story would be silly if it wasn't true, sort
Yeah.
of. But I thought what he did to Steve sort of was the most convincing
Mm.
thing, like especially from you know Steve's perspective, where
Yeah.
he had like actually lived through like suddenly having all this stuff happen like right before he could do anything with it.
Yeah. Like that's something because yeah, he wasn't a technical genius. He just was he could just
Exactly.
memorize everything. So he
Yeah.
memorized the things that Steve had come up with, and then just released them a couple months earlier.
Right.
Like and screwed him over. So that the stuff like that, like the circumstantial evidence suggests that he was doing what he's. And then the mechanism for flashback is, I mean, this is just a short story, but he comes up with a time travel system that actually like kind of. I mean, time travel always has some problems, but it's like makes more
Right.
sense than
This
most,
has
right?
less problems than a
Yeah.
lot of. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. But here's the thing that's really interesting is like he's done this many times. Like he
Yeah.
started doing this just to go back and play the game and played it like
Yeah.
hundreds of times and failed each time. Then he went back to get more information and try to like he's tried to ruin Peter once and he had to do it again, right?
Right. Yep.
I think he kept doing it more frequently. The first time, of course, it took him until he was 70 to develop the gizmo.
Yeah.
But I think then when he came back, he started just going back more frequently, like within 10 years. Like in the end of the story itself, he does it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He goes back.
But I feel like this is the first time that he's invited all of them to his house. Like
I
this is
think
the
that
first
that's
time.
probably true. Yeah.
Yeah. But
It's interesting. Yeah, it's one of those things that you don't necessarily think about until you're thinking about the story afterwards, and then it's kind of like Groundhog Day, where you're like, Jesus, how long, how long was he actually there? You know,
mm.
how old is Brucey in you know the mental sense or whatever?
So, and he basically brings them here, like, and he's having them play this game over and gives them the chance to win and do whatever they want, use the machine or get money.
Yeah.
But we find out eventually, and they figure out that in fact he had not won that game. All the variations were unsound, and he was going to lose that game,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that's part of the title, unsound variations. So this is really interesting,
Yeah.
but I feel like not only in relation to that game, I think George is making a point in general because when Peter's talking about it, and he's talking about like when you were in college, it seemed like you had all these paths, you could go all these possibilities, and you choose one, and it narrows, and becomes a position half of your making. This is a quote, and half chance, and then all the might be's are gone. And I feel like George is kind of trying to make saying a point. Is like, yeah, you could go back and say like, well, if I had done this, I would have done this. But if you just focus on the past, you don't know what would have happened, and the variation may have been unsound. And there's no point in just focusing on what may be. You should just go forward, learn from what you've done, but not try to be like, oh, I should have done this. That's what I would take away from the story.
Yeah, I mean, I think to the extent that there's a message in the story, I think that's probably it. It is just sort of interesting, the sort of wistful, like I mean, I guess I can remember a time like that too, right, where it was sort of like you could have really at that at one particular point or one particular like short span of years, you make like two or three really big decisions, and that basically determines like what you're going to be for the rest of your life or whatever. And that's an interesting thing to think about too. But yeah, obviously, not a thing you should dwell on excessively.
Vic?
Yeah, I mean, I was listening to this other podcast the other day on Freakonomics, and it's about quitting. It's about the merits of quitting, and it's like if something doesn't suit you, you should just quit and try it again, or instead of just investing too much time. Basically, it's about mostly about people trying to change their careers and jobs. It's about never. It's never too late. There's always you can quit, go back to college, do something else entirely. So yeah, it feels very connected to that.
Yeah.
But in a way, it's kind of this story. I mean, on one level, it's brilliant. It's a very smart story. But then the other, in the other way is, so after this meeting, at the end of it, basically what comes across is he's not responsible for his own failures. It's because of this guy. It's happening. It's kind of escapist because this is not going to happen in real life. In real life, I can't really blame somebody.
Yeah.
I know it can be depressing, and that's what everybody wants to hear, right? Oh, it's
Yeah.
because of God, it's because of bad luck things have happened, and that's probably true. Sometimes, yeah, it's there's a move, there's a counter move, but at some point you want to have to take responsibility for yourself also.
Yeah, it's easier
Yeah.
just to blame it on something else because when you have freedom and you're making choice, people actually get unhappy sometimes when they have too much freedom because then they have to take full responsibility for it. But I think Peter
Mhm.
says as well, it's half of your making and half of chance. And maybe
Yeah.
sometimes there's a different mix, like it's 25-75 or something. But
Sure, but
Bruce
it's a
himself
mix.
refuses to do that. He's just like, oh, it's all your fault and you guys did this to me. Well, he's invented a time machine. He can do anything. Like he can go back
Yeah.
and have a problem, and all he does is just like focus on getting revenge.
Yeah.
This is like a greatest invention ever, and he's just like wasting it on
Yeah.
this thing.
Yeah, it's true. He could have just gone to the tournament day itself, right? And played Vassals again with a new strategy.
Oh, he did though. The problem is though, as he calculated it out, there was no way to win that match.
Right, but he
But
could have
before
played
the
from
Oh,
the
from the very
beginning.
start, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
right from the start, instead of Sicilian, he could have done some other move instead.
That's true, but he's so focused on revenge, and because I think the problem is that first life was wasted basically. And he talks about it. It haunted him his whole life.
Mm.
But I mean, partly of his own fault because he focused on it, but he never got over it, and so all the way to 71, he was focused on that, and then he did this, and then so his whole first life is dominating what he's doing now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess it's just the personality of things, right? I mean, this guy took it in a bad way, and that's why I said, I'm going to ruin my friends. But if it was somebody else, a bit more friendlier personality, would have been like, no, I'm going to go back to the tournament and I'm going to win it, and these guys are going to love me then.
Yeah.
But do you think? And I remember that I think I read an Isaac Asimov story where it had all these people that were like getting over the age of a 120. They were like 130 or 140,
Hmm.
and he was trying to think like there's a reason why. Well, not really a reason, but like something comes out of people dying at a certain point because once you get really old, you get encrusted in your own views, and it's hard to change yourself or like give up. Like,
Yeah, I've noticed that actually in a lot of like sci-fi stuff is that even once we sort of do beat death or whatever, that a lot. I mean, not all. Like it's a mix. I mean, some sci-fi does have people just living forever, but a lot of them has people who basically after, like you were saying, like 150, 300 years or something like that, most people choose to die and move on.
well, not even that, but I mean like the ones that are still alive are not adaptable to like change or something. Like, they've become so
Yeah.
something like the mind isn't ready for like for that. Not that when people want.
The inertia of everything, yeah.
So it's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that. So at the end, they figured out that like this happened, and now they're in this timeline. They're gonna go and like live their life, and Bruce ends up going and trying again. Like he'll
Yeah.
so that's another thing because there's different timelines. That's the interesting thing, right? Like every time you do it, there's like a parallel.
Yeah, they seemed remarkably unconcerned for themselves in other timelines.
Yeah.
Which was like my main worry at that point was like, but guys,
Yeah.
you're fucking yourself over
Yeah.
in a different
Well, that's not
timeline.
them though, right? That's
I know it's not them. It's not them, but it's like it's your brother almost or something like that, right?
yeah. So you think they should have just killed him or something? And
I mean, yeah, obviously that's like sort of like, well, we're gonna murder him now is a little,
then in
but
that timeline,
Well, Peter and Steve could probably move on, but EC has that herpes or something. So he's good.
that's funny the way he said it because he's like, I just put the girl in your path. You're the one who like took it. Like you didn't have.
yeah, yeah, and even like I guess Peter is probably the one who at this point would have the easiest time moving on. But like EC is or not EC, Steve is an alcoholic, and he's probably out of the loop a little bit technologically speaking or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, like that's a harder thing to get back into.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's now gonna make a Nintendo 64 game. While
Right, yeah,
people are playing
exactly. Game of-
PlayStation 4s. It's like, who cares?
yeah.
Oh no, Steve's gonna start a Kickstarter.
Yeah. Yeah. But I guess there's the other argument that Steve is basically a genius. I mean, he did come up with a lot of stuff, and
now
that
that he
he'll
has a
be
belief in
okay.
himself again, that's the thing.
Yeah. Right.
But still, Steve made video games and maybe some computers, while Bruce made a time machine. Come on.
yeah. I mean that is true. That is true.
Like Bruce himself did have, he had abilities, right? He had mathematics or whatever that was needed for it, but it seemed like he put his whole it was the obsession that was needed to make that time machine because he put his whole life toward making.
Yeah.
If he'd actually gotten over the thing, he would have never made the time machine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know what's funny in this again in the short story, we have a short story from Martin, and then we have like a whole paragraph where it's like they ate thick slabs of rare prime rib with big potatoes, lots of vegetables, the wine level. It's like this
Yeah.
food description.
Yep.
That's it. Yeah, that's one sign. But another one again is like how both Vassals was like 400 pounds or whatever.
Yeah.
And then like even Bruce is always like his fat cheeks,
Yeah.
like 15 times like over again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I haven't seen 1982 George Martin, but he's probably slim and proper then.
But
I don't
It's
think
not
so. I
today's
think he
matter.
was from reading the sort of I don't know if you guys read the introductions and all the Dream Song collections or whatever, but
yeah.
if you read all those introductions, I feel like you get a pretty good, albeit sort of jumbled, biography of Martin. But it sounds like he was fat when he was young,
Yeah.
and then he was briefly slim, and then he was fat again.
Oh yeah, there's like a story that he talks about. It's the monkey. I can't remember the name. It's actually just have monkey.
Oh yeah, the monkey treatment.
Yeah, that's such a freaky story. First of all, like let's not go into it because we haven't given the thing. But,
Yeah.
But the thing from it though is that like you can tell that George is like he's been thinking about like weight like through his whole life.
Sure.
He
Yeah,
shares
absolutely.
it. That's one of the reasons why he's such a great writer. He draws from himself and shares it on paper. Like it's a brave thing to do, and he does. But from that story, you can be like, oh, okay, he's always like this is something being on his mind. But maybe that's why he always. It's possible he has a bit of like fat hatred or something because he always puts all these characters like in all the stories. It's always like these gigantean characters that are like these mammoths or like 450 pounds being like lifted, like and even
Right.
Song of Ice and Fire, and it's just like either intentional or not. It's probably intentional, but even interesting to see that. So in that one, and then in Meat House Man, he draws upon it. Like he just draws upon personal experience because I'm guessing I'm not a writer, but that's an effective way to do it rather than just trying to
make
imagine.
up everything.
Yeah. That's why I kind of I wonder though, like the way all the characters are described makes you think that that he's like Peter is the one that's being like parallel to George, but the other way, like with all these jokes and stuff, it's like possible that maybe he was also a bit of Bruce, like he was a combination of different characters
Yeah.
upon them because like he's good at like writing about like all these things and how they can make somebody want to get revenge and blah blah blah. So it's hard to tell.
True.
And I found it interesting that he didn't like. So his beef is with the three guys. Like he doesn't even care about Kathy. Like she's just like a tool.
Yeah.
But he's like he wants like pay for her to sleep with him.
Right.
But he's like doesn't even know. He's just like so awkward about it.
Yeah, you would think after spending so many lifetimes, you would have better pickup lines.
Yeah, but he has.
Can I pay for it?
Yeah, that's true.
It's just showing how like he has this perfect thing and his obsession has ruined it. Like he's completely ruined
Yeah,
what he could.
I mean, so like the last line of the short story is basically like, poor Bruce, all the variations are unsound or something,
Mm.
like indicating that, I guess really it's just saying that he's on like a quest that will never make him happy even when he succeeds.
Yeah.
But that's the other thing, right? Is that I think that obviously like Bruce will eventually succeed, right? If he'll eventually have a timeline where he,
Mm.
fucks these guys over and brags about it, and then they all leave and commit
Yeah.
suicide or whatever, right? I mean, like it's gonna win eventually.
I think so, but maybe he's saying that even when that happens, then he'll be sitting in his house and just.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's what he is saying, and that's true.
I think this is what he'll do the next time. Next time he'll make it so that Katie and Peter are not married, and then he'll do the thing.
See, I don't even think he'll go back that far. I think when he goes back this time, he'll go back a week or something like that,
Mm.
and then just have, because there's no reason to go through all the fucking shit again, Just go back a week
Mm.
and then and do something to Kathy, right? I mean, like get her boss or whatever.
Keep her busy over there.
Yeah, exactly. Give her a reason not to come, and then
Yeah, I think he will win.
yeah, exactly.
Because he plans everything. And he's like, "Oh, remember Vassallari? I've taken care of him too." Like
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Oh, and the guy, the Vassallari, was just being a dick. Like he had said, like that I had lost, but he had.
Yeah, that is really funny, actually. I wonder, like he did say that. I wonder if he actually talked to Vesselari at some point
Hmm.
and was like, "Hey, what did you mean when you fucking said you're done?" And Vesselari was like, "Oh yeah, I just, that wasn't true."
Yeah. It's funny. In the last, they think all the variations are unsound. He made him sad, but then after lunch, he'd forgotten about it. Like,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
it's all
which I
done.
guess is sort of like Bruce's whole problem with him, right? Is that
Can't
ultimately
forget.
like Peter doesn't give a shit. Right, because it was the other two that were mean to him or whatever. But his problem with Peter was just that he was like, yeah, I just didn't try that hard, didn't worry about it, stuck him in a bad position without really thinking about it or worrying about it or
Yeah. Well,
caring.
Yeah,
a point. I mean, there's a lot of stuff he says. Peter says, like, "Yep, you're right." Like he's like, 10 years ago, you didn't
Yeah,
try. You just gave up and made a deal with your buddy and like just watched and stuff. Like so, it's very gray. Like the problem is that Brucey just took it too far.
yeah,
That's the
yeah,
problem. Because it
yeah. I
was
mean, not
yeah,
everybody in the world is gonna love you, and
yeah,
that's the way that is.
exactly. Yeah. But he's actually helped Bruce. He's helped Kathy and Peter. Like by kind of it's like kind of marriage counseling.
Yeah, exactly. Really turned the relationship
Yeah.
around.
There's an interesting line here when Kathy's talking to him. It's like, Peter, you loathe yourself so much that there was no way to keep the loathing from rubbing off on me.
Yeah.
Be interesting. I'm wondering if George is again like trying to
Mm.
something there or
Yeah,
drawing.
I don't know. That's a
Because
possibility. I guess.
his career, while great, has been up and down over time and got better and better and better, right?
Yeah, it's certainly, I mean, it's certainly not been, a success from day one or
I think
whatever.
like Armageddon Rag, for example, like he put a lot into it and that one kind of failed commercially.
Yeah, it seemed like
Even
that
though it's
sort
a
of
good
hit
book. Like I think I completely forgotten what's in it, so I got to go read it again.
him.
I remember it being good though, but it was kind of weird. Like it wasn't ready for that. People weren't ready for it. I think.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I want to do is kind of review some of these short stories and be okay and be okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I
oh
think that
yeah.
that's actually a really good idea. There's more than a few of them that I'd like to talk about. So.
Yeah. Here's
Yeah,
another quote.
actually,
Yeah.
we wanted to do a Meat House Man on VOK some time ago, but it's kind of drifted out.
Uh,
Yeah, I'd be up for that.
Yeah,
Let's do
yeah,
it.
lots
We
of
can do some on
stories
be
here.
okay, then I don't have to edit it. So here's another line. Instead, his smile was so broad that his fat cheeks were threatening to crack in two. It's like, come on, how many of these is he
yeah.
there?
Yeah, it does. Like some of the time, George's like fat stuff sort of seems like somebody who's trying to get in ahead of the bullies, sort of, right?
Mhm.
Like if you say it first, then maybe they won't say it or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
No, I mean, like, I think that adds to the quality of his writing, though, because again, he's sharing.
yeah.
So, all right. Is there anything else we have on here? I'm trying to look to see.
I'm trying to think. I don't think I had anything else.
It is an ultimate revenge story. Like, even though it fails here, but it is like, wow, he really planned. Like,
Yeah. I mean, he's done a lot of fucking work on this revenge. And I think, yeah, obviously, I think it will be successful. I mean, he's a couple of moves away, I think, really from winning this time.
Okay. Well, why don't we wrap up then? Like, thanks for joining,
Okay.
guys. It was lots of fun. Maybe we'll do some sequels to this.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
stuff. But I'm looking forward to see how people thought of this story.
Yeah.
And the problem is for like in terms of after show, there's not really much of an option here except for Kathy. So just let me know what you think with Kathy. What do you do with Kathy?
Uh, I don't. I don't know. The early bitterness was just too much for me. I don't
Kind
think.
of
Yeah.
tarnished it.
Yeah. She's just so mean for no fucking reason. Just really, really mean, and I don't think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not a Mary
Yeah.
material.
No. I guess one night.
One
I mean,
nighter. She seems pretty
whatever.
pretty and
Yeah.
stuff. So and like
Yeah.
it's just the relationship is not working.
Yeah.
There. I mean,
I don't know. I think she's marriage worthy. She's been very supportive, right? I mean, towards the end,
Yeah.
she was describing everything like she was the one that was working and putting food on the table while this guy was spending days writing and things like that. And things have gone this bad. This is probably as bad as things get, and she's stuck with him and doesn't seem like she was gonna leave him soon or something. So yeah, I think she's marriage worthy.
Yeah, but I'd just like fuck everything up, and then she'd be mean to
Yeah,
me, and I
you
wouldn't
have to be
like.
successful. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Now Steve's wife, she's definitely not marriage worthy.
Yeah.
It's like he's talking about how everything's gone bad for him. Peter's like, oh, all this stuff happened. I've got a bitch wife, and like
Yeah.
right to her face too.
Yeah. Exactly.
Jeez. But you know what's interesting is like again like Bruce has like no real interest in Kathy. I mean he wouldn't, but I'm wondering like was she in all timelines or was she only in some of them? Like or maybe she's
Yeah.
in development.
Yeah. I
It's
don't
kind of
know. It's an interesting question. Like if he was, I guess he was with her even
although
when he was writing that first
yeah he
novel.
would have been
So
there. So I guess that's she was. But maybe like
yeah.
maybe there's like maybe she dies or something like in that first year or something like
Yeah. Who knows? Yeah.
and then he remarries like in that normal timeline.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. To me, it's funny the extent to which. I guess it's sort of part of like Peter's personality or whatever, like the uncaring part of it.
Mm.
Um, like I don't know. I guess it bothers me. I mean, not a huge amount, but it bothers me the extent to which like he's saying like, oh, if he went back in time, then Kathy would be left with a corpse here or whatever, right?
Mm.
So he's like worried about Kathy in this timeline, but like obviously completely unconcerned for Kathy in any of the other, millions of timelines or whatever that Brucey is going to go fuck up.
Mm.
And I don't know. That bothers me, but obviously, whatever. But
Well, I guess Kathy could have used it as well, and then
yeah, exactly, right? I mean, I guess the
yeah,
question then becomes like, will Bruce let people use it? But at the same time, I mean, like they could, overpower Bruce or whatever, and
yeah.
all
Although they
use
probably wouldn't
the.
know how to use it though. Like it's probably
Well, but if Bruce was gonna let Peter use it,
they could watch
then
and see.
they could see
I feel
that.
like Bruce probably would have let Cat. I don't know what he was thinking at the end. I guess he was like, I think he would have let him. I think.
Yeah, yeah. I
They
feel
should have
like
just killed Bruce right in there. That way,
yeah.
this entire chain of events is stopped instead of just walking
I
away,
sort of feel that way too, but
or broke the machine at least.
Yeah.
yeah, but presumably he could rebuild it. I mean, he does. He invented it in the first place, and he has the trick memory. So
All right, he builds it every time. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
Then it turns out it's all still fake. It's all not. It's not.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
just like this
exactly.
leather strap thing.
Oh, that's an idea. Bruce could have like
Set
given
up the
Peter a
suicide.
trap. Yeah, a booby trap saddle.
But
Um, and but basically said, "Oh, yeah, this is the time machine," and then Peter just electrocutes himself.
yeah, but you're right. Just the way with all the descriptions and everything, it seems like it is time travel. Just like there's something trapped
Yeah,
in this
yeah, exactly.
space and all of this. You
All
just gotta
that
assume
stuff.
that there's time travel in the story. You just gotta
Yeah,
go.
I think so.
Yeah. So here's a final question, I guess. So would you use that machine if you had the opportunity to?
I was thinking about that last night when I was rereading it.
Yeah, I would definitely use it because I haven't voted for the podcast awards as frequently as I should. So I'll go back a week and rectify it. Sorry about that.
No, you could go back and found a podcast before a podcast by Fire.
Yeah, steal the.
First one.
Oh yeah, go back and start VOK a year earlier. That way I could have been on the
You'll be
podcast
master
awards
of Kingsgrave.
myself.
Yeah, Masters of Kingsgrave, MOK.
Overlord.
I had this idea, but 2 months before, this Vikram guy just showed up.
Yeah.
From then, it's
Yeah.
all.
It's an appealing idea. It's a very appealing idea. Go back and undo our mistakes. Go back and study harder, get into a better college.
Well,
Yeah.
Or go back before my interview at
do all
Google or
that again, though,
something.
like to go back and do like high school and all that stuff again would be kind of annoying, just patience-wise. But on the other hand, with the information that you do have,
Yeah, exactly. Like a lot of it would
this
be.
is stock information. Just go buy and buy a shitload.
Yeah, for sure. Just go
Mm,
back.
mm,
Yeah, I mean, there's. Yeah, that for sure.
Yeah, like go back and buy $1 billion worth of Twitter stock.
Yeah.
Here's the thing: you go back, you change things, you get run over by a car. Like
Well,
it's
sure.
unpredictable. But then again, like that could happen.
You could get run over by a car tomorrow anyway.
So
yeah.
that wouldn't affect it either
Yeah.
in terms of that. But just like it is very tempting. Like if you actually knew for 100% that you could do it, like
Yeah.
it'd be very hard to stop and not do it unless you were very content with your life. And even if you are content with your life,
Even if you were, then why not like run through? I mean, like if you unless you
Yeah.
hated your life before and you like your life now.
Yeah.
I guess,
you
but
already have the experiences of the past life. It's not like you're erasing that. This is different than going back and erasing that.
yeah,
You still have the experiences that made you the person you are.
exactly, yeah.
And I guess that was the problem with Bruce. Like he was the ultimate way. He couldn't get rid of the experience of it. It was still stuck.
Right, yeah.
But if you go back and you could fix some of the mistakes with the experience of what you're knowing,
hmm
that would be pretty deadly.
I guess it's one of those things like you could never be, you could never be a blank slate again. So like you could sort of never change like the really bedrock parts of yourself.
Yeah.
You could only change your circumstances, but I think that would be enough.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with my bedrock personality or whatever, but yeah, there are circumstances that I wouldn't
Go
mind
back
changing.
and write a Song of Ice and Fire before George did.
but no, because you'd get that's probably what's happened. That's why we have such a long wait between books.
This thing is showing what happened. George actually went to use
Yeah.
the machine.
This is what happened, but he went back too soon, and so now he's like, shit. What the hell am I gonna do for these next books?
Or he goes back now that he's figured out the Menace plot. He could go back now.
Yeah, but he's gonna die. So he's gonna die in this timeline to go back and get the next 2 books, and then we're all gonna get screwed. Damn it.
Unless you use the machine yourself to go back.
Yeah, to go back to that timeline where George has actually finished all 7 books.
But you technically couldn't really do that to go to the same timeline the way it's working, I guess, right? It would be
No, you'd have to
go back
I guess
and then tell George something or like,
yeah,
give
yeah.
information. Go back to like a 20-year-old George and give him the 5 copies of the book.
Right.
He
So
went
be
back
like,
to get
right,
himself copies as like a loop.
yeah. Just be like, be careful when you go back to get those 7 copies. So the 7 fantasy novels you're gonna steal. Make sure you bring back the last 2.
Yeah, maybe he dropped like the book in the middle, like it fell.
Yeah, exactly. That's totally. It's like the history of the world where Moses has 15 commandments or whatever, and then drops the 1 tablet. Now he only has 10.
Yeah, there's just so much potential with this machine. It's crazy. So
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely, I love time travel
It's hard to
stories.
say
They're
that
always so
even
fun.
if you are happy with your life, well, it's still. But it just remember this is experiencing all those things over again. It's kind of.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to say no though. It's definitely you'd have to think about it very carefully.
I mean, one thing is you could just wait, right? Wait until you were, old or sick, or in a sort of had gotten to the end of, the good part of your life, and then go back then,
Yeah, you do it for like, and then take. But then you could affect so much. It'd be ridiculous. Like the amount of effect you could have is pretty crazy. But then again, the thing that was especially special about Bruce is he had the memory.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think it would be a lot. A normal person would have to go back. I think a lot more often.
They would be a lot less effective, definitely, compared to Bruce.
Right.
Okay, I guess we'll wrap up because we got VOK after this that we got to get to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay, I had a great time. Thanks for hosting, and thanks for coming up with the idea, etc., etc.
Okay. Cheers.